Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do a review of the ColourPop Sweet Talk palette. This was from their spring collection and I did a first impression demo of this palette. So if you didn't see that, you can check it out up above there because I did a look with this palette. And of course I'm wearing this again on my eyes today. So I can go through with you and tell you what I'm wearing on my eyes. Let me just do that real quick before we get into the review. So in my crease, I put the shade Meadow right here, which these two look very similar, but as you would have seen in my first impression, they are very similar, but this one is a little bit more pinky tone and this one has a little bit more of an orange tone to it. So just different directions you can go with those. And then this one is ICYMI, in case you missed it. I put that in to deepen the crease there. On the inner and outer corners to deepen it up even more, I used Feel Free. On my lid, I put the shimmer Melody, and then I topped with just a little bit of side to side, which is the Super Shock shadow in here. On my lower lash line, I just did a combination of these two mattes again. So let's get into talking about this palette. And I'm gonna keep this pretty brief because I did talk about a lot of these things in my first impression. So again, check out that video if you didn't see it already. But I recommend this palette 100%. I think it is a fabulous palette. It is $18, which is a little bit maybe pricier for ColourPop, especially for this size, and it doesn't have a mirror. For me, I'm not bothered by the fact that it doesn't have a mirror. Most of the time, I don't use the mirrors in palettes anyway, so that doesn't bother me, but just thinking about the price point, you're not getting a mirror in here. You are getting a lot of shades in here, but you know, just with every ColourPop palette, you're not getting a ton of product. So maybe that's something to think about if you're somebody who, you know, doesn't have a huge collection and you're somebody who's actually going to go through shadows. But if you have a big collection, or if you just like to try different shadows, or if you're looking for something just for the season, you know, and for the trend of these type of shades, then maybe that doesn't bother you. I like the fact that I could get this palette, you know, as just sort of a trendy spring palette, and I'm not breaking the bank with it. I also love the fact that you have 4 different finishes in here. You've got all of your matte shades, your true mattes. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mattes. You've got your 1 Super Shock shade, which is the first palette that ColourPop has come out with a Super Shock shadow, and we'll talk about that shade in just a bit. You've got 2 pressed glitters here, which is another newer thing to ColourPop, although I don't know that that's the first palette that's had them in there, but they are in there. And then you've got 1, 2 shimmer shades. So just kind of a typical shimmer, but they are really nice shimmers. I find that I get the most punch when I wet them and use a glitter base, but you don't have to, and they still are beautiful. Now, as far as this Super Shock shadow here, it is a beautiful shade, and you'll see you have to be kind of careful with it because it definitely has that formula, but they claim that they've worked on this formula and they've changed it up so that they could include it in this palette and it won't dry out. But as you can see on my finger, it is very sheer, and I just kind of patted that on top of the other shimmer. You could build that up a little bit, but it really is a topper shade. It is really not just a full opacity type of shade. However, it is beautiful, and it adds a beautiful effect if you put it on top of some other shade in this palette or anything else for that matter. But I really like that, and I love the idea of them including these Super Shock shadows into palettes because, like I mentioned in my other video, I don't get a lot of use out of my Super Shock shadows because as beautiful as they are singles, and they're just sort of, you know, put away in a drawer and I forget to use them. And I do really like them, and I think they're really fun, and especially some of the more glittery, shimmery ones, they can just be so unique and beautiful. So I just love the idea of them being in palettes like this. As for the pressed glitters, they're beautiful, they're glitters, you know, so you have to be careful with them. I would recommend doing your eyes first if you're going to use those glitters. And of course, using a glitter base is going to give you the best effect. I just went in with my fingers with these and just kind of patted it onto a glitter base, and they're gorgeous, they're beautiful. I probably would have preferred if they were 2 more Super Shock shadows because I'm just not going to use glitters as much on an everyday basis. They're a beautiful pop to, you know, really spice up a look if you're going out, you know, or just if you wanted to wear glitter for that matter. But I just feel like I would have gotten more use out of Super Shock shadows, and I'm just not using the glitters quite as much. They are really nice though, and I like the 2 different shades that you have here. It gives you a nice variety. And like I said, these shimmers are beautiful. They have a really nice shift to them, which I think is just gorgeous. Overall, the shades that you get in here, I absolutely love. I think you get such a nice variety of shades. They all complement each other super well. They go well together. You can go in a lot of different directions with this palette, even though it looks very monochromatic. You can take it in a lot of different directions, and I really, really enjoy that. Part of that is the different textures that you have, but part of that is the different tones. Like I mentioned with these 2 different mattes here, they're pretty similar, but they definitely have a different undertone, and so depending on which one you use, you can take it in a different direction. And then you have some more, you know, browny type of shades. This one is kind of like a mustardy, you know, type of brown. This one's a little bit more of a typical brown, but you know, you can just kind of come up with a lot of different types of looks with this palette, and I've been so thrilled every time that I use it. And I find that the mattes work really, really nicely. I'm maybe the most trouble with this shade right here, and that's just because it's a darker shade, honestly, but it's not anything major, and I'm able to make it work. And I really like the undertone of this shade here. It's just got a beautiful richness to it, and I think it complements a look really, really nicely instead of just sort of a typical matte brown or even a black. I don't love the shade right here, the shade Catch Me, and part of that is just because of my own preferences. There's nothing wrong with the shade. I think it works really nicely as a shade to blend out shadows, and I did use that today after I kind of added the colors into my crease. I took that one around the edges and just sort of buffed everything out. I think it works really well in that way. It's really just like a matte, like peachy pink shade. I don't know if you can see that there, but it's not light enough for me really to highlight the brow bone. It works okay. I used it in my first impression look and it looked okay, but after I saw it later and I used it again and again, it's really just not light enough for me, just by a hair. And same thing on the inner corner, it's just not brightening enough, and I don't really use something to just set the lid, and so I'm just not getting a ton of use out of this shade, but it's nice, and I think if it suits your skin tone and your preferences, then you might really enjoy that shade. I think it could work really nice as, you know, a matte lid shade. So if you wanted to use it in that way, that would be nice too. This palette is just as good a quality as the other ColourPop palettes that I have tried, and I'm so thrilled that I got it. I didn't get it right away, and now I'm so glad that I got it because it's so great for this season. It really does feel so spring, and I just love that. And again, if you're buying something that is sort of a trendy color palette or, you know, a trendy whatever it is, it's just nice to get something that's not super expensive, because if this is not quite as popular next year, it's not going to bother me as much if I'm not using it as much. I still will, because I don't care what the trend is really, but it's still nice to be able to do that because, you know, they always say that about clothing items as well, to not spend your money on trendy pieces, to spend your money on staple pieces in your collection. And I think the same goes for makeup. But I think if you like these tones, you will not be disappointed in the quality. I think that it really is beautiful. Again, I would have loved if these 2 glitter shades were Super Shock shadows, just because I would have really enjoyed that. That's just personal preference. And like I said, there isn't a brow bone highlight, but that's not really something that bothers me. I don't need that in a palette. There isn't really something for the inner corners. That's also not something that really bothers me because I can pull that in from any palette that I want. But if you're just thinking of this as an all-in-one palette, to me, those are the only things that are really missing. Doesn't really bother me though, and it's not really taking points away from this palette for me. You can easily pair this up with other things, other palettes, other, you know, pigments, anything else like you can with any other palette, but I think on its own, it's beautiful, and it really is a standalone palette minus those couple of things. As I'm filming this right now, it is still sold out, but I wanted to make sure and get up this review before they restock it again, because I do think that it sells out fairly quickly. I bought this when they had restocked it, and then it did sell out. So, you know, I think people have been really enjoying this palette, and I think it's for a good reason, because it is really, really nice. So if you've been wanting to pick this one up, I think you will not be disappointed. I think you'll be really, really happy with it. And I would say, you know, just keep an eye out on the ColourPop Instagram, Trendmood, things like that, to just see when they restock it again. When I picked up this palette, they were having a promotion for free shipping, no minimum, and so that's what I did. But otherwise, you just need to spend $30 to get free shipping on the ColourPop website. You certainly could just pay for shipping, but I kind of like to just, you know, get the free shipping when I can. So, you know, just maybe think about a couple of other things that you might want if you want to do that, but either way, I think this is so great and I would highly recommend it. Let me know if you picked up this palette and how you feel about it. Are you enjoying it as much as I am? Let us know in the comments below. And if you haven't gotten it, are you thinking about getting it? I would love to hear what you think. Let me know if there's anything else you would like to see with this palette, but otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed this review. And if you checked out my first impression, I hope that you enjoyed that as well. If you like this video, please make sure and give it a big thumbs up. That really does help out my channel so much. I post videos every single Monday and Thursday, 8 p.m. Central Time. If you are not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. I would love for you to stick around, and I really hope to see you next time. Bye.